Mark, please, Julia pleaded, backing away. You need help, you're not well. Don't lie to me, he shouted, advancing on her. You think you can just walk away from this?
Yep. Here we go again. No matter how many times YouTube suggests it to me, or how many times I'm told by somebody in my life to consume this type of content, I've never found myself to be an enjoyer of true crime. Despite my interest in the dark and mysterious sides of the internet and of life, I've never found myself interested in true crime for multiple reasons. This is not to say that I haven't consumed true crime before, and there are a couple of creators that I listen to who have true crime on their channel, at least in a few videos or more. See, I really like Mr. Ballin, and I really like Kyle Hates Hiking. However, I liked Kyle because he was a hiker, not because of the true crime stuff, and I finally just broken down and started to listen to his stories. I think the thing that keeps me on their channels, though, is that it's not all true crime. It's mixed in and varied. There's plenty of stories about dark and mysterious other types of things. Also, Kyle just talks about the outdoors in general, which I'm extremely interested in. And while I have my reasons to not be a fan of true crime, we'll get into those later. But for now, I want to get into the real reason that I've brought you all here.
The Thompsons resided in an affluent neighborhood, renowned for its stately homes, tree-lined streets, and a strong sense of community. It was in one of these grand residences that the complex lives of William Bill Thompson, his wife Vanessa, and his stepson Darius Johnson converged in ways that no one could have predicted. William Bill Thompson, at 56 years old, was a man who had seemingly achieved the American dream. Born and raised in Atlanta, Bill was the youngest of 3 siblings in a working-class family.
Now, I know what you're thinking. This is just a shitty AI voiceover talking about some true crime. And sure, it's definitely a shitty AI voiceover. But guess what else it is? You see, if you Google William Bill Thompson murdered by a Darius in Georgia, all you get for the top 2 results is 2 more places to watch this exact same video posted by different people. What I'm saying here is that this crime never happened. I mean, I'm sure a crime similar to this has happened. But this specific crime, this specific case that's being talked about, never happened. And that's exactly why the video you're watching right now, all of the videos are either stock footage or AI generated. There is no case to go along with this story. So that's exactly what this is. It's just a story, and nothing else. A fictional story, and a pretty shitty fictional story at that. But why do I think this is a big deal? It's just an AI voiceover on a fictional story trying to get views on YouTube. Fair enough. Where I think the true problem comes into effect is the fact that this channel, along with many other channels, are all branded as true crime, real crime, definitely not fake crime, and definitely not fictional stories. Crime MKT, where you will discover dramatic real-life crime stories. So you have that. How about True Crime Case Studio? Hashtag real crime, hashtag true crime, hashtag true crime stories. How about True Crime Cases? It's named True Crime Cases and says True Crime Documentary. How about Shadowed Secrets? Hashtag True Crime Documentary, hashtag Real Crime Mystery, hashtag True Crime. That's not the only thing that I find absurd here. There are many other things about these videos besides them being AI and besides them being fictional stories that make me raise an eyebrow. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I don't really like true crime. Besides not being very entertained by it, There are many other reasons I dislike true crime. One of those reasons is usually the way that it's branded. Large creators in the true crime space tend to title their videos extremely hyperbolic. This, of course, is something that everybody does on YouTube to entice the viewer to watch. The problem with true crime is that it involves real people, real victims, real things happening to these real people. And when you title the video very hyperbolic, it sets off an alarm for me, because you're not really respecting the victims in these stories. But the AI channels seem to take it to another level. And it's not to say that they really have any morals, because there's no real people here, so they don't really need to care about the way the videos are titled. But even I think they're kind of extreme for YouTube. Often, the title and the thumbnail combination are completely over-sexualized. Some of my favorite of them, like husband exposes wife's trans identity on wedding day, ends in murder. And while I don't think that this should be acceptable for YouTube, some of these channels do actually cover real stories. And in these cases is where I have an issue with these titles. If we look at a genuine and a large creator, like Mr. Ballin, we'll see that his titles aren't quite as hyperbolic, and don't make so much comments about the family involved or the people involved. He's still able to use clickable titles, while making it still somewhat respectable for what happened. And in more ways than that, I know really established true crime creators will typically reach out to the families or do something for them. Mr. Ballin has the Ballin Foundation, and Kyle has addressed this himself on his podcast.
Man, this one gets me because, like, oh my God, I try so hard not to do that, you know?
I mean, I think you do a good job with donating to rescue teams and sharing lessons in the videos. And I don't think that you take advantage of them. I think that it's just you're documenting what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm telling a story, right?
Yeah, you're just telling a story.
I think it would be predatory if I was embellishing or exaggerating or straight up lying, obviously. If I was covering the story in like a disrespectful way. Whenever I can reach, if it's a story about someone who survived, I always try to get through to them. And when it's someone that didn't make it, same thing, I'll try to reach out to a loved one. I don't always get through to them.
Yeah.
And then I kind of have to make the decision like, okay, do I still make this story?
You can see as Kyle is talking about this, he's going through his head because they're sensitive topics and there's real people involved. So a lot goes through his head when he's making these types of videos. And I doubt anything goes through the person's head who makes the next videos that we're going to talk about. The channel Dark Stories has a lot of the equally fake true crime stories. However, they have a lot of actual stories on here. Things that you can find the case files for, or at least news articles for. But here's where stuff gets a little bit crazy. When clicking on videos, you'll immediately be hit with a warning that talks about how the case is taken from open sources of the internet, and the author is not engaged in investigation. The video is created on basis of already existing information. The channel is a documentary, narrative, and informational nature. What they are saying here is that they have read a case that has been covered by an outlet and then taken that information and quote-unquote made it their own. If we open up the transcript for one of their videos, it talks about this case, and it says this: these factors together led to her memory loss. In the end of January 14th, 2018, Cheyenne Anton was sentenced to 7 years in prison for manslaughter. In the courtroom, Cheyenne apologized to Brittany's family, wiping away tears, and stated that she will never forgive herself. For this, she did not specify what exactly she doesn't forgive herself for. If you type that transcript into Google, it will lead you to a few articles, but the top one is an article by the BBC covering this case. Now, it's not exactly word for word, but you can see here that it talks about how the judge agreed to a 7-year sentence when she pleaded guilty to manslaughter. Then it has in quotes, "I will never forgive myself. Nothing I say or do will ever bring her back. I am very, very sorry. It shouldn't have ever happened," she said in a statement through her lawyer. The interesting part about this, at least that I find interesting, is how close that reads to the transcript. I know it's not exactly the same, but with how close it is, I can't help but think that the person who wrote the script for the video told AI to write them a script based on this case. And then the AI just copied what different articles said, reworded it very ever so slightly, and then dumped it onto YouTube like there's nothing wrong. But here's my issue with that. If you're going to do that, if you're going to take from another article, especially for something as serious as a true crime case, you should be citing your sources. Now, I know that up to this point in the video, I've been speaking very highly of Mr. Ballin and Kyle Hates Hiking. However, I didn't expect to find this when I got to this point in the video. When I was researching for this video and I realized that some of the AI channels that were taking real cases were not leaving citation, I decided to go get some examples of how a channel can do it correctly. And then I discovered that almost none of the mainstream large popular true crime channels link any of their sources. None of the police files that are open sourced. None of the articles that they might have read stuff from. Literally zero citation on any of these large scale channels. And I think that that is an issue in itself. The closest I ever saw to this was Kyle linking a book of one of the surviving family members, and some of the people will link a profile to a public figure if one of the victims is now a public figure. I can understand if a creator of an AI channel doesn't leave a citation. They probably have no integrity anyways. But for these really large creators to handle these topics in such ways, I find it pretty despicable. Now here's a channel who does it the right way. The Morbid podcast covers plenty of true crime in depth, and when I say in depth, I mean it. And their citations show it. I would even argue that this is too many citations for a YouTube video. In reality, you wouldn't even have to leave this much detail. Just a few links to some articles you read would be enough. If you go back to the channel Crime MKT, you know, the one that says that they're real crime, they put a warning up in the beginning of some of their videos that specifies that they don't mean to offend anybody, and they apologize if some of the details conflict with actual events. At the very bottom, they say, based on the above, our script is written and based on the principles of fair use and citation. Citation? You have no citations in your video. And also your video is not protected under fair use, or at least the script is not, as we know the AI is just stealing straight from Google. Almost every one of these channels tries to get away with this by saying the story is based on true events, although the names and locations have been changed to protect the identity of those involved. And while I think that makes no sense for true crime, I would be inclined to believe it if the stories didn't sound like this.
Worked for. Mark, please, Julia pleaded, backing away. You need help, you're not well. Don't lie to me, he shouted, advancing on her. You think you can just walk away from this? From me? You think they'll protect you? Julia's back hit the wall, and she realized there was nowhere left to go. Mark, please, just listen to me. But he wasn't listening. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a gun, aiming it at her. I'm sorry, Julia, he said, his voice cold, but I can't let you ruin everything. Julia's heart was racing, her mind screaming at her to do something, anything. She lunged for the gun, grabbing hold of it, and they struggled.
That's definitely a fake story. And it's not even a good story. Also, the title is Woman Discovers Her Boyfriend's Horrifying Secret, and if you watch the whole damn half-hour video, you find out that the secret is that he's gonna kill her. How is that the secret? It can't even come up with good premises. Oh, also, inconveniently, in the comments, they leave a pinned comment that says this story comes from a closed police file and has been rewritten. Locations, names, and details have been changed for security reasons. Be sure to watch till the end so you can get that really shocking surprise that her boyfriend killed her. A closed police file. A closed police file, and everything's been rewritten. Amazing. Another very interesting thing about these channels is some of them will use the community posts section to basically have their viewers write the stories for them. Look at the questions they're asking. What's your preferred level of graphic narration in true crime stories? What type of crime cases would you like to see covered next? What aspects of true crime cases fascinates you? Which relationship dynamic draws you to a true crime? Which era of true crime stories interests you the most? And we can tell that they're using this feedback to make fake stories that cater to what those people are interested in. As you can see, some of these titles, like Kindergarten Teacher was cheating with 3 other men. Teacher's innocent love leads to obsession and death. Wife swap fantasy turned to an obsession and murder. I'm guessing that a lot of people liked the love triangle stories, because that's what half of these are. Interestingly, while I was exploring the community tabs, I came across some community tabs on Crime MKT, where they ask what year did the United States declare independence, and what day is Independence Day celebrated in the United States. These were so random, in the most random place, it caught me so off guard. The only thing I could imagine is that this is some weird secret governmental survey. I doubt it, but that was all I could think because it was in the middle of the most random community posts. That's not the only conspiracy theory that popped into my head while searching through these videos. Does anybody else find it a little bit interesting that the channel called Dark Stories mostly only features black people in the thumbnails? It was the same thing on the Crime Case Files channel. I have no idea what's going on here, but for some reason there's a overwhelming amount of black people featured in these stories. It's also amazing that people are coming up with these ideas and branding them as true crime. This is more deranged than most fanfic you would come across. Like, teen son caught mom at hotel getting ran through teammates. It ends in a massacre. Who comes up with that?
The blade gleamed under the dim hotel lights. Without thinking, without hesitation, Alexis lunged. Paul was the closest. Before anyone could react, Alexis grabbed the knife and swung it with all his strength. The blade sank into Paul's stomach.
I can't stress how bad these stories are, even for fake stories. And if you read the comments, there are enough people who are believing this. At least a couple of these are bots, probably. Also, this one's not really a criticism, as I've already criticized them for using the AI backgrounds and pictures, but sometimes AI makes stuff and it looks so ridiculous, and I realized this while I was researching this, and it caught me way off guard. Like, what the hell is going on here? What is this? That's nightmare fuel. That is straight nightmare fuel. Now, I know I said that there's a lot of people who think that this is real, and that's fine. But there are also plenty of people who recognize that these are fake stories. And maybe the AI voice doesn't bother them. And maybe they're like this commenter, who asks, what's the point of calling it true crime when it's fiction? Why not let it be fiction? Yes, truly awful fiction, but fiction. And I have to say that I can answer that. True crime is extremely popular, and it's only on the rise to get more popular. So putting true crime as the title, and putting true crime as the hashtags, obviously will garner some views. It is simply only a way to get them views. And they can't brand this as fiction, as even the small amount of views it does get, if it was branded as fiction, like the commenter says, it's truly terrible fiction. Which means that nobody would watch this stuff. And that means that they can't use AI to make the quick buck that they're trying to get. Like with the rest of my video essays, I've tried to make YouTube a better place by calling out this bullshit. I wish that YouTube would just completely ban AI completely, because you could then at least report it and maybe they would remove AI from their platform. However, that won't happen. But you can report these channels for misinformation and spam, as it is both of those things. Will YouTube do anything about it? Who knows, but at least this time, it's not really hurting anybody. Thanks for watching, guys. Check out my website, bittersnake.com, for some merch. See you in the next one.